Let's take a trip down memory lane today and dive into some of the strangest, creepiest, and just downright weird children's cartoons around. Here are the top 10 dark cartoons from your childhood that will give you nightmares. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Courage the Cowardly Dog. We are starting this list off with intention today because I feel like this is one of the most widely feared children's cartoons ever. Courage the Cowardly Dog is an absolutely iconic cartoon that I can vividly remember absolutely terrifying me as a child. The show is basically just about Courage, who is a dog with human-like characteristics, and his elderly owners. The three all live in the middle of nowhere, and each episode they are thrown into different insane, bizarre, and usually really disturbing situations that they have to get out of. The show is known for its extremely eerie and creepy atmosphere and the energy that the show gives off. Contrary to the name, Courage is a dog who is very easily frightened. He was abandoned when he was a puppy after his parents were sent into outer space, and this is when the very friendly Muriel found him and took him in. Muriel, however, is married to the grumpy, mean, and greedy Eustace, who is often quite rude to Courage. Despite being terrified, Courage always finds a way to face his fears in order to protect his owners, and I think that is something that we can all appreciate. All in all, Courage the Cowardly Dog is a fantastic cartoon, but it is most definitely very surreal and pretty unbelievable at times. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Kitchen Casanova. The Kitchen Casanova was made in 1996 and was a part of Cartoon Network's What a Cartoon series. Basically, it was about a guy who is trying to prepare dinner for his date, but he is exceptionally nervous, and of course Murphy's Law would have it that everything is going wrong. This cartoon was actually eventually pulled from air because of the fact that at one point he accidentally slices off one of his fingers and blood goes spurting everywhere, which probably isn't an ideal image for children, but I honestly don't even think that was the worst part. In the end, when the date arrives and he reveals the big meal he made, it's actually just the grossest and creepiest looking thing ever, and it had me feeling very glad that I was only watching a cartoon. The dinner has eyeballs, bloody bones, a severed human foot, and a rolled up tongue that unfortunately unrolls, and then twitches before being covered up again. Okay, so it's a pile of gross, really not food, and I could get past that except for the fact that they actually eat it. I just hate that so much. Why did they have to? All in all, the whole thing is just very bizarre, and the ending leaves you with a really uncomfortable feeling. In our number 8 spot today, we have The Cameraman's Revenge. The Cameraman's Revenge comes all the way from 1912, and it is unlike anything I have ever seen before, which after watching it I feel pretty incredibly grateful for. Basically, the whole show is just a bunch of bugs, and I just want to start off by making it clear that these are very real, dead bugs that are being used as puppets, okay? Nightmare fuel enough. That's too much. That little tidbit is enough to make me say no thank you, but if that's not enough to deter you, surely the strange plot will. Basically, Mr. Beetle is out on town and looking for some companionship when he sees a very beautiful lady dragonfly who he flirts with. Unbeknownst to Mr. Beetle, the dragonfly's ex-boyfriend, a grasshopper who is a cameraman, sees this whole thing going down and is very jealous. Well, as it turns out, Mr. Beetle has a Mrs. Beetle who hears about this infidelity from the grasshopper, but as it turns out, she is having her own kind of adulterous experience. You really have to see this one to believe it. It's a bunch of, it's just a bunch of unfaithful bugs, I don't know, and it's stop motion of dead bugs, which just makes it something I'll really never forget. But man, I wish I could. I really do. In our number 7 spot today, we have Sunshine. Sunshine, or Little Sun, is a show from Czechoslovakia that ran from 1979 until 1989, and unfortunately, it's actually pretty hard to find most of the episodes that aired. There were different segments in the show and different characters, and while most of it was fairly normal for the 1980s, there's just one character in this show that is well known for just being extremely creepy. He's not exactly a cartoon, but he is a puppet, and I just had to include him. The character's name is Radifak Plachta, which translates to something like Big Nose Blanket. The character is made up of 2 men under a blanket, and he has a super long neck. He has an absolutely terrifying voice that honestly would be suitable for a serial killer instead of a children's TV show, and the TV station that ran this show had been called Avant-Garde for not being afraid to show a puppet that isn't pretty, but I don't think not pretty is the best way to put it. I think downright terrifying is a far more accurate description of this guy. It's so creepy, but it's so 1980s. In our number 6 spot today, we have Catdog. Catdog is actually a cartoon I can remember watching when I was a kid, and I do remember it scaring the heck out of me. Maybe I was just easily scared, but I don't think so. Catdog is half cat, half dog creature that gets itself into situations and has quite the time figuring everything out, considering the whole cat half and dog half can't seem to get along with each other. This is already a weird premise, but it's not even the strangest part of the show. There is an episode when Cat wants to brush Dog's teeth and he crawls into his own mouth and travels through its own body to get to the dog side, where it then comes out of Dog's mouth. So now Cat is hanging out of Dog's mouth, inside out, veins and muscles and everything we never want to see exposed. I know this was probably meant to just be a silly little thing, but it's scary. I don't know, man. It's a lot for me to process. I can't even imagine a child. Maybe I'm looking into it a little too much, but like, I don't know. There's just a weird vibe going on here. I don't like it. No thank you. In our number 5 spot today, we have Frothy Dawg. Moving on from Catdog to Frothy Dawg. Alright, Frothy Dawg was a part of Cartoon Network's Cartoons That Never Made It. You'll soon find out why. This series of shorts were small little cartoons that would play sometimes before commercials, or they would be put in somewhere to break up a longer running show, and the whole point of them were that they were supposed to be these little snippets or promos for cartoons that didn't ever get fleshed out into full shows, for very obvious reasons. Frothy Dawg is the show that never was, and it is about exactly what you were most likely assuming it is about, which is a dog with rabies. The short features a pretty upbeat tune, so it's not necessarily scary, but it's very disturbing. Some of the lyrics are things like, "You can look, but you shouldn't touch, or else he'll gnaw your arm off." Okay, not exactly a nice ring. Or another part where they explain that Frothy is always smiling because he has lockjaw. Alright, I can't believe this is real. At the end of the day, I feel extremely grateful that this is one that never made it into a full series, because I just don't think anyone really needs a frothy dog in their life, and I stand by that. In our number 4 spot today, we have Happy Tree Friends. Happy Tree Friends is absolutely not a show I would ever show to a child for many reasons, okay? Just get that out there. I think that's important to start off with. This show is an adult cartoon that is disguised like a kid's show. If you just saw the characters, you would have no idea what dark things really happen, because all of the characters are cute little forest animals, and the animation is very bright and very colorful, but this show is actually pretty horrifying. Each episode shows these cute little forest animals getting into extremely violent and graphic situations. Sometimes it is through accidents, and sometimes it is absolutely deliberate, and the violence ranges from smaller injuries and pain to some pretty full-blown gruesome activity. Most of the characters who die in the show do find themselves reincarnated for the next episode though, so I guess that's a plus. I'm just trying to find the bright side here, you know, glass half full. In our number 3 spot today, we have Ghostly Thrillers. Ghostly Thrillers is a creepy little animated movie that features 2 stories. One being The Youth Who Wanted to Shiver, which is about a boy who isn't afraid of anything, so he sets out on an adventure to learn how to shiver in fear. But it's the other part of this film, called Ghost in the Shed, that I really want to talk about today. Ghost in the Shed starts off with a traveling salesman who unfortunately knocks on the wrong door one day. He knocks on a farmer's door just before dusk and asks if he can spend the night. The farmer and his sons are more than happy to have him stay, because they actually just end up killing and robbing him before the sun comes up the next day. After this, they buried his body underneath the shed in the back, and no one ever suspected a thing. Flash forward quite a few years, and the area has become more populated, and a new family lives in the house now. This new family obviously doesn't know about the body buried in the back, and they're actually good people and not killers. The salesman's spirit, of course, has been lingering around, and he won't move on to the other side until he gets someone to find his body so that people can know what happened to him. Basically, the rest of the film is just the salesman haunting this family until they finally dig up the backyard and find his skeleton, and honestly, the whole concept is just not something I would have assumed would be for children. I feel like there are real adult horror movies with the exact same plot, so this might just be one to skip over for the kids. In our number 2 spot today, we have Feline Follies. Feline Follies was created in 1919 and was the first time we got to see the character of Felix the cat. This cartoon shows Felix, who is called Master Tom at this point, meeting a female white cat. Felix serenades her and they fall in lust with each other, and Felix says that he will devote all 9 line of his lives to her. How romantic. He even sings so loud he wakes up an entire neighborhood. While this is all going on, a group of mice have broken into Felix's home and basically just trashed it. When Felix's owner comes home and sees the mess, she blames Felix and ends up throwing him out of the house. This is when Felix decides that he will go and live with his new lady cat friend. To Felix's surprise, he now realizes that he is the father to an entire litter of kittens. At this point, you might be asking yourself how this cartoon is dark and how it could have possibly made it this high on the list. Well, it is how this one ends that really gets you. Felix obviously wasn't ready for the consequence of his actions, because once he sees all of his little kitten children, his reaction is to run away. He runs towards the local gas house where he lays down and sticks a hose in his mouth and turns it on. So basically, he just takes his own life by intentionally inhaling coal gas. Definitely not how I thought this one was gonna turn out, and what a questionable storyline for a children's cartoon overall. What were people thinking, man? In our number 1 spot today, we have The Devil's Ball, or The Mascot. This stop-motion animated short comes from 1933 and is honestly quite a ride, and a mix between fascinating and terrifying. Basically, it starts off fairly normal and fine, with a stuffed dog named Duffy coming to life and then heading out on an adventure for an orange, but this isn't what we are here to talk about today. Once midnight strikes, the devil comes out of a liquor bottle, and this is when things really start to get crazy. So basically now the devil is holding some kind of soiree, and things such as different creatures, vegetables, old garbage, it all begins to come to life and displaying human characteristics, and these are the guests of the ball. Over the course of the ball, we see some pretty spooky things, like when the devil tries to convince one of the guests to stab someone. Duffy is kind of the saving grace of this whole thing, because Duffy is actually cute and basically the only creature in this whole thing that isn't absolutely terrifying. All in all, the whole thing was originally 40 minutes, but it is tough to find that version, and most you will find now are a 25-minute cut. It certainly is worth a watch, but I wouldn't necessarily show this one to any children unless you want them to be scarred for life. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!